Marketplace.org has those stories now. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio. It's the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
Now you'll never have to miss out on shows going on around Jacksonville. Find out who's playing near you on the Jax Music Hour every Saturday night at 8, right here on WJCT News 89.9.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
City Council President Randy White. He'll talk about it and also take your calls and questions. Then, in the midst of Jacksonville's housing crisis, a new program emerges to minimize evictions. And an artist whose work focuses on environmental science and social justice takes up residence at the Corner Gallery. Plus, America's fastest growing sport takes us to court. You can join the conversation on air at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or X. And
NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Biden has arrived in France to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day. As NPR's Tamara Keith reports, that will be followed by a formal state visit with French President Emmanuel Macron.
Biden is set to deliver remarks tying the heroism of the American troops who landed on the beaches of Normandy in 1944 to the ongoing global fight for freedom and democracy. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan gave a preview on the flight over.
It's going to be a action-packed, I think extremely moving and extremely important 3 days in France, and with an opportunity for him to say thank you directly to the veterans who saved democracy, saved the free world, and set the stage for the decades of peace and prosperity that followed.
Biden is also scheduled to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who will be in Normandy. Tamara Keith, NPR News, Paris.
The Lebanese army has arrested a gunman who opened fire at the U.S. Embassy near Beirut today. Only the gunman was wounded. The U.S. Embassy says all its staff are safe. Several states held primaries yesterday. They included Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. Washington, D.C. held its Democratic primary, too. Many Democratic voters selected uncommitted instead of President Biden. Instead of Donald Trump, many Republican voters chose GOP candidates who have dropped out of the race, such as Nikki Haley and Chris Christie. NPR's Ben Giles says it remains to be seen what might happen after Biden and Trump officially clinch their presidential nominations.
What'll be telling is how those unsatisfied voters cast votes in November, though. Even though Biden and Trump won their nominations, they're going to win or lose in November on the margins. And the margins might not matter as much in states like New Mexico, but it is something I'll be keeping an eye on when I get back to Arizona. That's a state Biden only won in 2020 by less than 11,000 votes.
NPR's Ben Giles reporting. Excessive heat warnings are now in effect for much of the desert Southwest and California. NPR's Kirk Siegler reports cities are mobilizing efforts to protect elderly residents and people who are homeless.
Extreme heat warnings are expected to affect upwards of 10 million Westerners this week. Forecasters say Phoenix and Las Vegas could hit 112 during this so-called heat dome event. Queen Anune is deputy chief of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue. She's urging people to stay indoors unless it's an emergency. And first responders are expecting an uptick in calls for heat cramps, exhaustion, and heat stroke.
And also call 911. The earlier you notify 911 during these heat emergencies, the better the outcome will be for the patients.
Cities from Vegas to Tucson, Arizona are opening extra cooling centers, and city workers are planning to distribute heat aid kits to the homeless that include reusable water bottles, electrolytes, and instant ice packs. Kirk Siegler, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
And the time is now 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Corum. The Clay County Sheriff's Office has started testing body cams, but before its 350 deputies park the cameras on their uniform vests, the department has launched a year-and-a-half-long study in which company to use. Sheriff Michelle Cook says a dozen deputies have been trained to test different body cams to see how well they work and how to download and store what they record.
We're taking baby steps to make sure we do it right. The last thing I want is to put 100 cameras out there and then we can't keep up with the redactions or the public records request or the storage need. And my goal is for, a year and a half from now, everybody has them. We're going to try a couple different companies to make sure that it's a good match.
Cook says along with patrol deputies, K-9 officers, and traffic units will also be part of the test team because they're so hard on the equipment. The estimated cost to implement the program for the first year is nearly $1.5 million. Jacksonville's Museum of Science and History is $1.5 million shy of meeting an extended deadline to raise $40 million to build its new facility on the North Bank. They haven't quite reached the mandated $40 million in private funds to qualify for a city lease across the river. Mosh CEO Alastair Dove says the museum has a deadline of June 30th. The city agreement will allow the museum to lease city-owned land on the North Bank for 40 years at $1 a year. 81 degrees in Jacksonville now, low 90s today.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Saatva. Saatva has 9 made-to-order mattresses that are designed to help every type of sleeper. Learn more at SAATVA.com. And from the listeners who support this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, incoming City Council President Randy White talks about stadium expenditures, policy priorities, and answers your calls and questions. Later, a newly created program hopes to stabilize the housing crisis by offering a financial lifeline to renters. But first, the Jacksonville City Council will get a new leader July 1. West Side District Council member Randy White was elected president by a unanimous vote early last week. He takes the helm as the city faces massive spending decisions and a time of limited resources. We're joined now by Randy White. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And you can call or send questions. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can reach out on social media, or you can call us on air at 904-549-2937. Randy White, I've seen you're sometimes called the Godfather by your colleagues. I've got to ask a little bit about that. First of all, Godfather Part 1 or Godfather Part 2?
Well, I think hopefully it's a good Godfather. I actually acquired that when I was on JFRD. I was there 32 years and was a former union president. Then Mayor Payton appointed me deputy director, assistant fire chief, and it actually was a Hilda Westbury, which was my assistant, named me that, and it kind of stuck. And
what do you think he meant by it?
Well, I'm not sure. Hopefully it meant that, I try to help everybody, and I've done that my whole life, my whole career. It's important to me when people have issues or problems, try to get them through it. And that name just kind of stuck, and it's been 10 or 15 years, I guess, or 20 that that name. A lot of people use it. I don't never call myself that, but that's what they call me, and it's it kind of raises my wife's eyebrows when she hears it. She said, "Oh my goodness!" And actually, in the installation last year as vice president, it was said, and it embarrasses her a little bit. But if there's such a thing as a good godfather, hopefully that's the meaning of it.
All right. Well, so you spent 3 decades at the fire department. You worked for Mayor Payton's administration. You've been on council now for how many years?
Went in September 5th, 2018. So I come in a little early. The former District 12 council person had got out early to run for tax collector, actually, and that opened the seat up, and nobody run against me in that 8-month time. And so I went in 10 months early. So I'm in my second term now, second 4-year term, but 2018.
So that's a long time in the world of city employment, city politics. Do you consider yourself a political insider?
I wouldn't say a political insider. Everything's political, from your church, the T-ball with your grandkids, politics is in everything. So I've been around it a long time. Certainly in the administration at the fire department. Prior to that, as union president, even before union president in 2001, I was involved heavily with the union. So I've been around politics a long time.
So you're going to be leading the council, and part of what the job of council president is to pick the chairs of committees. Who's going to be on your leadership team?
Well, I haven't announced that yet. I'm still working on that.
I was going to try to get you to give us an early peek.
I know you was, and I wouldn't want to speak about that until the people that's going to be in those leadership positions knew it first. So that'll be a couple of days out. I'll get a little bit closer to July 1st because we still have President Salem, which is doing a wonderful job, and he still is the president. So I leave until July 1st. I will keep most of my powder dry, so to speak, on my assignments.
So in just a short while, a little less than an hour, in fact, you've got to head over to City Hall. It's going to be a long discussion today and possibly another discussion tomorrow about the stadium. Yeah,
we've got several meetings on the calendar. It starts today at 10 o'clock. We call it a workshop. So that'll start today at 10, and it's set for tomorrow, and then we'll go as many times as we need to, and hopefully we'll get to a place where we can vote before the end of the month.
For you personally, there's been a lot of one-on-one meetings that the team has been able to do with council members. Of course, council members themselves can't meet, so this will be an opportunity for council members to vet each other's questions. But in your meetings so far with either the administration or team representatives, are your questions answered to your satisfaction?
The questions I had, I've just met one time, and it was just an hour meeting, and I got some of my questions
Who was that with?
That was with Mark Lamping and Mike Weinstein, the head negotiator for the city. I met with them and had a few questions answered, but really waiting. I haven't dove deep. I'm waiting for the workshop so we can hear, or I can hear, the thoughts of the other council members and my thoughts, and that'll start today at 10 o'clock.
Do you have additional questions you want to ask today?
I don't listen. The first day I'll listen and let everybody else talk and have their questions, and then obviously some of their questions will probably answer my questions, but then if there's things left that I'm interested in or not clear on, I will ask those questions starting today.
Well, we have a question from Mike in Mandarin. Good morning, Mike. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mike.
Yes, hello, Councilmember White. Hey there. I was wondering if you were going to support merging the stadium legislation with the more popular and needed community benefits agreement. They really need to go together. And also if you're going to support really providing all the funding needed for the broken promises of consolidation, sidewalks, lighting, road repair, septic tank removal. There's always money for JAGs and other businesses, but never seems to be money for that infrastructure that's been promised, especially in areas like Northwest Jacksonville.
Thanks, Mike. What do you think about that? We heard last week a poll, Randy, that said that the support for the stadium deal actually increases with that community benefit agreement element, which is additional spending on the surrounding area and other neighborhoods and parks around the city.
Well, that's one of the things I'll have some questions on. There's a lot of things going on in Jacksonville now, a lot of growth, thank goodness, that will support some or most of these things. The city's growing. They say 1,000 people a day moving to Florida, and I think a lot of them is stopping in Jacksonville, which is a good thing. The JAGS is very important, and getting all these things done. Other things that you didn't mention, Mike, was, we got the jail issue. I think probably in the next couple of years will be some of the bigger issues Jacksonville has ever faced, other than back in the late 90s, whenever we did the Better Jacksonville plan, or Mayor Delaney did the Better Jacksonville plan. Now it's time again to look at big ticket items, and obviously there's not enough money to go around and do everything. We've got to try to put things in order of how they should be done. But I'm with you, Mike. There's a lot of things in my district, District 12. That's the largest district land-wise, and that's where a lot of the growth, or most of the growth right now, is happening surrounding Cecil Field. That's what's making the growth out there, and got the equestrian center fair going to the equestrian center. So I think we're putting about $200 million a year in road repaving and the things you talked about, sidewalk, and really that's not covering but 1 or 2% of what needs to be done. So we've got to find ways to stay within our means, because I will not support a tax increase. We've got to stay within the funds that we have, but it's hard to get everything done, Mike, but I'm with you. We will continue to move forward and do the best we can.
We've got a call from Tom about that subject of the jail. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning to you all, too. I was just wondering if he was willing to consider setting aside the jail in favor of more pressing needs for the city, such as economic development, infrastructure, and resiliency. The jail is going to offer zero return on investment, and there are more pressing needs for Jacksonville right now. Already our roads are in terrible shape, and pushing things into the future that need to be done now really isn't the answer.
Tom, I recognize your voice. I think you've spent a lot of time at City Council with your comments
Yes,
that we listened to, so I know who you are. I agree with you, and what we did, the jail, I don't want to use the term kicking the can down the road, but we did acquire $9 million to try to get some more life out of the jail. I think that'll buy us 4 or 5 years. So I don't think the jail is anything that will happen overnight, but it's something we got to keep on the forefront because it's just actually, if you've ever toured the jail, and I'm sure you haven't, or maybe you have, it's past its lifespan, and the capacity that it can hold and the capacity that's there is way more than it should be. And it's just basically, I guess the right term would be wore out. It's so I don't think that'll happen immediately, but it is certainly one of my top priorities to get the ball rolling on where we are going to go on that, but it'll be a little while in the future.
I'm going to ask you about that in terms of the jail. One of the elements of that discussion is where it would be. And there have been some discussions that the sheriff himself has mentioned, one in your district, in the Cecil Field area. I want to ask you, first of all, if that's something that you believe is seriously being considered, and secondly, what you're hearing from constituents about that possibility.
Well, I would not support it being at Cecil. That's a growth area for industry, and I think it needs, me personally, I think it needs to be pretty close to the courthouse, because my understanding they have to move 200 to 300 folks a day to the court system. A lot of that's being done on Zoom now, so at this point, I would not be in favor of that. In fact, 25 or 30 years ago, there was talk about building a prison at Cecil, and that didn't happen. And I would not support that unless I have more information. But at this point, I could not support it being in the Cecil area with the growth of Flight Star, Boeing, and all the things that's going out there. I personally don't think that's the proper place.
We've got a call from Eric in Arlington. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a lot of money that is intended for municipalities that comes from the federal government, like, for instance, the IRA, which passed a year ago, I guess. There's a lot of money in there for improvements to municipalities that tend to filter down to poor people like myself. So, but we have, like, for instance, a governor who refused a $3.5 billion Medicaid expansion a few years ago, which is again for poor people, for the health care of poor people. Are we doing, as a city, everything that we can do to vacuum up all this money that the federal government is making available to us, or are we standing around saying, well, we don't care about the quality of life for poor people, we don't want the money? What is your stand on that? Thank you.
My stand on that, I mean, I know the mayor's office has folks searching grants, and I try to stay in my lane. I think they're doing all they can to bring all the money they can into the city, which I would support. But to be totally honest with you, that is not part of what I think my job is as a district councilman. We have given the resources for the mayor to have funds for grant writers, and I'll let them stay with what they're doing, and hopefully they'll bring as much money as they can to Duval County.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to incoming City Council President Randy White. He is taking your calls and questions, and you can join our conversation at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media, and you can also watch our live stream right now. It's on YouTube and Facebook. money for the jail, the figure being thrown around $1 billion, there is currently no named source for that money. Where do you envision it coming from?
With like I say, the growth and all the things we have before us, and I think that's the question that we cannot answer at this point. I honestly don't know. That's why I or my colleagues, we appropriated $9 million to get us some time between now and then to try to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do all these things that's happening in the city right now. So,
well, what are some of the options? I mean, $1 billion, we couldn't take that out of the general fund, right? I mean, even if it was over a period of years.
Could not.
Okay. And so if it can't come out of the general fund, and you said you don't want to see a tax increase, what are the options besides that?
I think the big option is the growth that we're having in the city, and I can speak to District 12, just the growth there, which would be more tax revenue. There's probably over 10,000 or 15,000 houses that's coming. Of course, it'll take several years for that to build out, 25 years probably for that to build out completely. But our ad valorem taxes are increasing every year from the growth. And with the industry coming in, I believe that's going to lift up our coffers to be able to do most of these things or get them all done the best we can.
Is there any sense as to what the ad valorem increase could be with the projected growth? Like, is that something that you're able to get the council auditor or somebody to kind of crunch numbers on so that you would have a sense as to how close to $1 billion that would get us?
That actually comes from the property appraiser's office, and we haven't got the latest numbers. It's getting close to time for them to give us those figures, but we don't have that at this point.
Okay. I want to talk to you about the pension plan. Is in these conversations. The Better Jacksonville plan tax was eventually going to be redirected to helping bring down the pension debt. It's still enormous for the police and fire pension fund. And the city also, under the Curry administration, moved back from a traditional pension. There's been discussion about trying to undo that or change so that we could have a more traditional pension, help with recruitment and retaining firefighters and police. So what's your thoughts on that?
That's very important to me. We did lose, or the firefighters lost, the defined benefits plan back 6 or 7 years ago. And I believe it is creating a recruiting. I believe right now there's a couple hundred vacancies in corrections, probably 100 vacancies in the sheriff's office. The fire department right now is kind of even. Back in the day, they would probably be 3 times the people applied that got hired, and now pretty much everyone that applies for JFRD, if they pass all the background checks and that kind of thing, gets hired. What I would like to see and us investigate, and that'll be a special committee I'll form. We now have a 401k for the new hires, for them to have an option. Our surrounding counties, Nassau, Baker, St. John's, Clay, and throughout most of the state, they are on the FRS, the Florida Retirement System, which is a defined benefit plan. I would like to look and see if we could give the young firefighters and police officers an option whether to go into 401k or to join the Florida Retirement System. And if we can get that done, I think it'll help in our recruitment and retainment.
What is the cost of doing that? What would it cost to put new recruits into FRS?
Well, that's why I will form a special committee. I don't know, and we've got to look at that. And I'll have some subject matter experts looking at that and have the FRS involved and the city auditors. And that's something that I will do after July 1st, but I do not have that information now.
Is there some reason to think that that would be more sustainable or less expensive than what we were doing at the city level with the pension that, we basically ended for new recruits?
I don't know if it'd be more or less expensive. That's what we got to look at. But we need to retain the people we hire. JFRD, JSO, they hire these people. They have thousands and thousands of dollars in training. And we've seen there's younger firemen and policemen that's moving on to other locations close to us that does have a defined benefit plan. So I think it'll help in retention and we don't want to train these people and spend all those dollars and they leave us.
So you formerly served as the president of the Jacksonville Association of Firefighters. Do you describe yourself as a union man?
Yes. I went from the union side to the administrative side, but at heart, I'm big on protecting our firefighters and our police officers in any way I can. So, yes, I would say that.
What about other unions? I know that the teachers union, for instance, has been getting a lot less support, I would say, at the state level and even at the local level for teachers who are in a union.
Well, I stayed in my lane. I stayed in the public safety sector of the union side, and I know they have their own issues and their own problems. And I've known that union president, the former union president, for many years. I actually went to school with her, so they have the same issues. But I let them deal with their issues, and I deal with the what I know, the public safety side of it.
But do you support the teachers union as in the same way?
Absolutely, yes, I do.
Okay. So the question of what happens to police and fire if they were to move to FRS, would people be in a position to get two pensions at that point if they were, in the local system, not as a new recruit, but an existing member, and then switching to FRS?
Well, that's the piece we've got to have the committee. I'm not sure if they would transfer their money over, or they would not get two pensions. And in fact, the 401k is not a pension. That would be your money that you take with you when you retire at the end of your career that you do whatever with. So that's not really a pension. That's just a dollar amount that you would have saved over the years that you do the best you can with it after you retire, where the FRS would be a pension, and it would be a income that you don't control. The Florida State retirement system would control that, but that's the difference in the 401k and the defined benefit plan.
Would you say, though, for the people that currently receive, not the new recruits, but the people who are existing on the city's defined benefit pension plan still, would they be eligible for FRS as well, or no?
No, they're retired. Their career is done, so they, have the Jacksonville Fire and Pension Fund that they will continue getting to the day they die. So they would not be involved at all with the FRS.
All right. Got a question from Brad in Jacksonville Beach. Go ahead, Brad.
Councilman, if you could just help me with the timeline of the pension issue. A minute ago, you said that the police and fire lost the defined benefits. But if I understand it correctly, they were voted on by the union. And what we didn't do is any pension reform at the time. We just came up with a pay for the current benefits. The people that were hired just prior to go into the investment plan, they're still due their pensions. And are these lucrative pensions, would you say? I just heard you make the comment that they get it till the day they die. We didn't do any pension reform. Would you be willing to look at that as a way to move forward? Thank you.
Ask that question again. I didn't quite understand your question. Now, we're talking about the last 6 years. All the new hires is now on the 401k. The folks that was there prior that is in the old defined benefits plan, and a lot of those are gone and retired. But I didn't understand your question. Say it again.
Yes, sir. And that's what I was asking. The people that were hired 2 years before we changed the plan, they would be due the defined benefits plan. They're probably coming up on their retirement right now. Am I correct that the average time that a JFRD firefighter enters the DROP program is around 23, 24 years?
That's
is that
correct.
Really a career?
That's correct.
So that's 23 years is a pension career for those hired prior to this change. And that wasn't, we didn't do any reform to that, correct? All we did was we agreed to pay them those benefits, and we said we're going to put, and again, not us, the citizens, we only voted for the tax.
Correct.
Both unions voted to move us into this plan.
They did.
And I think there will, yes, sir, and I would think there, if I understand FRS correctly, to move into it, they're going to ask you for a repayment if there's not enough, or I would think the city would have to pay to enter these new firemen into the FRS. Would that be your thoughts too?
Probably so, yes, sir. And that's, like I say, going back to what I said earlier, that's why I want to do the special committee to get all these things hammered out and see how it would work and if it would be possible to do it. There's too many questions now that hasn't been answered. But I believe in the future, if we could get to that and a firefighter, young firefighter, or a police officer had the choice, then that would be their choice. And a lot of people would want to stay with the 401k, from what I'm hearing. But you're right, the 23, 24 year, you have to work 20 to retire. And if you did do 20 years, that would be 60% of your salary, and it's 2% a year thereafter, up to 30 years, and then you can drop for 5. But all that, is in the past, and no one else now is on that plan, obviously.
Right.
But would just have to see how the FRS would work in conjunction with the 401k.
I'm going to ask you about a different topic. This week at Naval Station Mayport, the Visit Control Center, which is kind of where they issue passes, is under construction because it's non-operational due to flooding. Now, obviously, that's not our purview, that's the Navy, but that facility could lose as much as a third of its land during extreme high tides in the next 50 years. They're going to be seeing 5 to 6 feet of sea level rise. What do you think the city is doing? Is the city doing enough? Is the city allocating enough resources for that eventuality, not just in Mayport, but all along the rivers, all along the coastline of this First Coast?
Well, we have a resilience officer now that is looking at all those things. And to be honest with you, I haven't followed that. So we'll leave it up to that department to tell us what we should do. I'm not so sure, people's on both sides of that coin. If it will be 5 or 6 feet, and I honestly don't know. But obviously we got to deal with that when they do all their reports and try to figure the best way to protect the citizens and protect the city.
What about other impacts of climate change, like heat, which is something that we've been seeing, and storms? We had 500 storms in the month of May in the United States, which is about not quite double what is the usual 275 tornadoes. We had them in here in Florida. We're obviously seeing our insurance rates respond to the impacts of climate change, which are happening.
That's a subject that I'm not a expert on, so I cannot answer that question. Like I say, I'll leave it to the resilience officer to guide us in the right direction. I do know with our tree ordinance, and I know Mayor Deegan is heavy involved in with planting trees and shade trees. That hopefully that'll get us ahead of the curve a little bit. But I'm not an expert on that, and I try not to opine on things I'm not an expert on.
I just ask you, do you think that maybe you need to do a little more research on it? I mean, it does seem like kind of one of the existential threats of our time.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're doing as a city with a new resilient officer. So we've brought her in a year or so ago, and I'm sure she's working on it daily, and we'll have to see where it goes from there.
She is one person, though.
Well, she has a staff. It's not a one person doing it, and I don't know how many is on her staff, but there's more than one person looking at it.
Yeah, I know as of like 2 years ago, she was the only one. I'm not sure if there's much more than that now.
That's something I'll have to check on.
Right. We've got a call from Hilda, and then we're going to probably have to wrap it up. Hilda, on the west side, go ahead.
Hi. Do you have any power of helping your constituents to oppose the school closures, in particular the elementary schools that are located in the neighborhoods? That's number one. Number two, the building, what's going up as far as across from Crystal Springs off of Hannon and what is being built over there off of Ramona? And are they going to be rentals or are they going to be sold to people? Because in my opinion, if you just rent them out, they really don't give up people an opportunity to build wealth. If you sell them, then they can move maybe from a townhome to a house.
Thanks, Hilda. Go ahead.
I believe the numbers, I think it's 84 townhomes right at the corner of Ramona and Cahoon, and they will be single family deeded. They won't be rentals. They'll be, ownership.
How about the schools?
Across from the school is housing.
No, I mean in terms of preventing closures.
We've got the school board, and the city council has very little say on what the school board issues are and what the school board plans to do. So we have no issue, and we have no the city council has no authority in what the school board does.
Do you have a bully pulpit, though, as president of the
We
council?
we do, and there is obviously, I'm sure, as every district councilman, whatever schools in their district they're concerned with, they will, share their opinions. I've got two in mind that they say one or the other, either Thomas Jefferson or White House, will close because they're building, they got two newer schools right down the street. So I will weigh in on that when I decide what's in my opinion, but that's all it would be as an opinion.
All right. Well, incoming City Council President Randy White, it's nice to talk to you. We hope that you'll come back and visit us during your term.
Thank you. Thanks.
1,000 eviction notices were filed against Jacksonville tenants last year, and the city has seen a 124% increase since the start of the pandemic in evictions. But a new program aims to intervene to help stop those evictions before they occur. To talk about that, I'm joined now by Colleen Rodriguez, CEO of Jewish Family and Community Services, which helps administer the program. Good morning, Colleen.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So we know this isn't just a rental program. A lot of factors contribute to the affordable housing crisis.
Absolutely.
What all is happening in the local economy and in the housing economy?
So what we're seeing, and it's been kind of coming up over the last several years, is that rents are going up, but salaries are not. The wages are not matching. And so for the last decade, for the most part, we're seeing data that shows a lot of people are spending over 50% of their household income on their rent. And so that's a problem because they're not having the ability to do savings. They're not able to purchase homes. And so now with increase of inflation, we're seeing healthcare costs going up, with rentals going up, and people are not able to afford their house.
And so housing insecurity is an issue for homeowners as well. We've seen, foreclosures spike. We've seen increases in insurance rates. But why are renters uniquely vulnerable when it comes to either issues of affordable housing or housing shortages?
So what we're seeing is that a lot of the landlords now don't even reside in Florida. They don't even live in Jacksonville, and they have the opportunity to raise the rents. And so we are seeing rents going up $300, $400, $500 a month with very little notice. And as people can't afford that, they're evicting them. And there's a long list of people because affordable housing is limited here. And so there's a line of people waiting for that same property, and people can't afford.
What do we know about the waiting list that exists for affordable housing in the city? I mean, it's always been quite long.
I think it's 150,000 people now waiting on the wait list for vouchers. So that's why this program is so important. If we can keep people from being evicted, because if you're on the list and you have an eviction, that puts you even farther behind. And so if we can keep people in their current homes, that's critical.
So this new program is aiming at forestalling an eviction, basically preventing it from occurring. What's the trigger for that? How does this, what gets the ball rolling?
So the majority of the clients are going to come through the eviction process. So 60 to 100 evictions are filed every day in Duval County at the courthouse,
Wow.
which was shocking to me. I couldn't imagine it's, up to 500 evictions filed a week. So what happens now when the landlords are at the courthouse and they're filing it, literally a stop sign pops up and says, are you wanting to work with this tenant? Are you wanting to work with a program that could possibly make you whole, landlord, as well as prevent an eviction? And if they say yes, then they're sent to a JacksonvilleEvictionDiversion.org link, and then they're matched with a Jewish family employee.
And so this is, anybody's eligible for it, right? It's if you're a renter and you're facing an eviction.
Not everyone is eligible. You do have to live in Duval County. That goes all the way to the beaches. That includes Baldwin. You do need to have a child under the age of 18 in the home or a senior over the age of 65. And so you have to be a resident of the legal resident of the United States. And so I would encourage people to go to JacksonvilleEvictionDiversion.org and link with us if they feel like they meet the criteria. They need to be obviously receiving an eviction notice or have been told that they are having a non-payment, coming to them, and that they're at risk.
And does it matter what stage they're at? I'm not sure if there's a point at which landlords typically file for eviction, if it's a certain number of months that someone is in arrears on rent, or if it matters how far behind you are in terms of whether you would qualify for this program.
So we are really using the date of November. If you are behind for utilities or your rent on or after November, that really is a reasonable amount of time that we can really help you. We can't go back and pay a year's worth of of past due rent. But around that November window, if you've been having challenges paying your rent or your utilities or any part of your lease, that's really the applicable time period.
And does that shift, that November date, going forward?
It'll shift moving forward, as this funding will end September 30th, and so then we hope to have additional funding that will come October 1st. But this funding ends September 30th.
I see. And so, what sort of response have you gotten, and what do you know about whether it's been effective for people?
So it's been very effective for people. I know for a fact we've kept 74 families in their homes since the start of it. And it started February 1st, really kicked off in March. So 74 families have been kept in their home. Part of this program is going back 6 months later to make sure they're still in that same residence. That's going to be the real telltale sign. So we'll start to look at those numbers in August and September. What we are seeing is families that have had really a life-changing event. It's not families that have been chronically homeless, chronically needing services and support. It's an illness. It's an unexpected job loss. It's a domestic violence situation where the family had to separate and that person's left alone with the expenses. And so it's families that really, if we can intervene and help and make them whole, they're going to be stable moving forward.
Tell us again how people can find out more information about it.
JacksonvilleEvictionDiversion.org is the best way, and then they'll be linked with Jewish Family and Community Services. If they want to go to our website, they can do that as well at jfcsjax.org, but the eviction diversion is the best way.
And to be clear, it doesn't matter what religion you are.
It does not. Jewish Family serves the entire community, over 29,000 people every year, and so all are welcome to reach out to us.
All right. Well, Colleen Rodriguez, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this today.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, blending art, social justice, and the space between art and activism can be transformative, but it's not always a comfortable space. A local artist in residency program aims to create more of that space, and it's called Moving the Margins. To talk about it, I'm joined by Shawana Brooks, the executive director of Moving the Margins. Welcome, Shawana.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And this year's artist in residence, Sarah Crooks. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you.
So, Sarah, your art has a decidedly environmental bent, and some people may remember, I was looking back at the project that you did called Nest many years ago.
Many years ago, yes.
Which people will remember if they were living in the city at that time. It was kind of one of these first urban structure, interactive, somewhat art structures that was installed downtown. It was like a giant nest almost that you could stand in.
It was an 1,800-pound nest that 5 people could sit inside, and I was invited to participate with an artist residency program at the YWCA, and worked with women that were victims of domestic violence and on the edge of homelessness then, and we created this 1,800-pound nest that was part of Arts Mania, which was the first public sculpture in Jacksonville. And Arts Mania, I think it was in 1989 was that time. So we called it Nest 89, and it was a huge public project. I got lots of support from the community. Poets were on site to help the public weave words about homelessness into the nest. The women that I had worked with at the Y, which was a shelter at that time, were actually participants in helping the public weave all this cushy stuff into the nest. And unfortunately, a vandal set it on fire. So at that time, it was the first public art piece, but it was also a tragedy. But it actually raised the voice of the crisis of homelessness and domestic violence to a national level.
Shawana, your program is called Moving the Margins. What margins are you moving?
That's a very good question, and I think we like to move the margins of community members, but specifically marginalized artists. So that's women, that's people with disabilities or differently abled people, people of color, and also women. This is why we're working with Sarah Crooks this year as our first inaugural artist of our 4th year with Moving the Margins.
And what does this residency program look like? What does it provide for the artist, and how is the community encouraged to get involved?
Our residency program is kind of like over 6 months, like where we select the artists, and then we try to get them engaged with different community members, like most likely nonprofits that work around their area, and try to also help to, discuss different issues with the artists, give them some more information about the installation that they're doing. And then we have a opening reception, and we let the public come in, and we try to ask the public questions, and we also do different workshops throughout the community to get them involved.
And so the residency for the artist, though, is it a period of time that they commit to? Are they producing work in a certain place or a certain space?
We like for them to be working like in their studios or wherever they work. We think it's important to prioritize artists and how they are working in order to keep them here in our community. We think it's so important to resource them and then have them come in, tell us what they want or what they're thinking of the gallery, how they want to transform the space, and then just let them engage from there.
And so where will they be seeing this work?
They can see it at the Jesse Ball DuPont Center. They are strictly right on the first floor. As soon as you walk in, you can see the gallery. It's all covered by glass. That's another significant word that we try to work with the artists to cover that space up, but we like them to come in and be communal, and it's open to the public 9:30 to 5.
Sarah, this latest piece of yours, it's called The Long Wait Home. Explain what it looks like and what it says.
It's actually a series of works, and I took the space for what it is, which is really transparent. It's all glass. It's a beautiful gallery space, and I've created work that itself is transparent, so it's an installation. There are some objects. There's also a gathering space for community discussion, which is a big part of my process now. So it incorporates an element of walking through the gallery and experiencing the objects, but also with the anticipation of community dialogue.
And so this is called the Corner Gallery. Is that what it's in?
Mm-hmm.
But it's in the Jesse.
Yes, it's the Corner Gallery inside the Jesse Ball DuPont Center.
So that's on Adams.
Yes, that's Adams and Ocean right on the corner. We think that's so important. It's on the corner of Ocean and Adams. So every time you pass by, you should be able to see this really significant banner on the outside that hopefully brings you in.
All right. Well, Shawana Brooks and Sarah Crooks, thanks so much for being here, talking about the project and sharing your art with us.
Thank you. I hope
Thank you for having us. Let me also say happy anniversary to my husband. Our 18th anniversary is tomorrow.
Oh, congrats, Shawana.
Thank you.
That's great. Well,
agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
On the next Fresh Air, Colson Whitehead. After writing 2 Pulitzer Prize-winning novels, The Underground Railroad and The Nickel Boys, he started writing crime novels set in Harlem. His most recent one, Crook Manifesto, is an entertaining read about crime at every level, from small-time crooks to revolutionaries, cops, politicians, and Harlem's elite. Join us
today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Fatherhood is getting a makeover in Japan with images that make doting dads look cool.
Makeup.
This is masculinity too, being a good dad.
Can getting dads more involved make a difference in Japan's plummeting birth rate? Next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3 here on WJCT News 89.9.
There's a lot at stake with the Supreme Court this summer. A decision in former President Trump's immunity case is expected to come by July. The court is also deciding several abortion cases, a case about restricting political posts on social media, and another about whether Trump and January 6th rioters can be charged with obstruction. The Supreme Court cases to watch this summer, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Pickleball. It's fun to say. It's America's fastest growing sport, and it's coming to downtown, or rather, Toontown. I'm joined now by Richard Parks, Director of Pickleball Activities at Toontown, which officially unveils a new indoor facility.
So we're a brand new indoor facility. We've got 6 indoor courts located at Toontown, which is at 1726 East Church Street, which is just east of Everbank Field, 2 blocks east of Everbank Field.
It's that part of Church Street that it's only a block long.
It's a block long. It's along Church Street, but we actually face Talleyrand, but we're addressed as Church Street.
So it's like
Correct.
Church and Talleyrand. And if
Correct.
people who haven't been there, you kind of wander past, you just like, what's happening?
What is happening?
Yeah,
it's a wild space. It really is.
Describe it for what it looks like on the outside.
Toontown was, Chance Garris purchased the building about 7 years ago. It was a very bland, plain building, just in an industrial area in Jacksonville. And he hired a couple of painters, one being Kyle Montero, very talented artist. If you go in there, the entire building is wrapped in Kyle's work, 100% of the outside of the building, and it's very impressive. Doesn't look like anything else in that area or anywhere in Jacksonville, I promise you.
It definitely doesn't. And a lot of it's kind of Looney Tune cartoons, right?
It's a lot of the Looney Tune cartoons. He freehands it with spray cans. Very impressive to watch him paint it. He did 100% of the outside of the building. Very colorful. We're mixing art with entertainment, with facilities, with sport, with food and beverage, and it's a good mix.
So there's pickleball courts around Jacksonville. There's not very many indoor pickleball courts. That seems like it's going to be kind of key in the summer.
So there's 7 indoor pickleball courts with outdoor playing surfaces. We take pride in having a very consistent outdoor playing surface, consistent with what you would play out your local park outdoors. There's 7 indoor courts. We have 6 of them under one roof there at Toontown Pickleball.
Oh, wow. And so it's pickleball, and then at some point, it used to be a pizza place in there. There's going to be again?
Yeah, we're transferring some things over to, and we'll have pizza up in about a month. So we're going to be a full food and beverage location.
And there's a lounge there, so you can.
We have a 3,500 square foot lounge and bar area. So come in, play some pickleball. We're doing events in there. Anything you'd like to do, we do tailgating, obviously, at the game because of our location. Game days, we're packed out over there.
So you brought in a pickleball. You schooled me. It's not a racket. It's called a paddle.
It is not a racket. It is a paddle. Rackets have strings, so the terminology is a little different. So
and it's kind of square for people who aren't able to see it. But it weighs about like a ping pong.
Yeah, that's 7.8 ounces. I think that one right there weighs.
Why are people so nuts for pickleball these days?
Pickleball is a very social game. If you go into any of the outdoor facilities, outdoor parks, it's played in a open play kind of environment, and with that structure. Every player that goes into a park, and Toontown as well, has an opportunity to play with other partners and play against other players, and that creates a very, very social dynamics. That's number one. And number two, it's a very easy game to learn. In an hour and a half, we take over at Toontown, we have beginner classes. We can take somebody from zero knowledge of pickleball. In an hour and a half, we can have them playing pickleball, enjoying pickleball, moving around, being active, having a good time. And so it's a very, very easy game to learn. If you were to take somebody and say in an hour and a half, you've never hit a golf ball before, but we're going to play 18 holes of golf, I say good luck. But in pickleball, we can do that.
Is it the kind of thing, if I just grab a racket and I go to a pickleball court, that I can have a pickup game?
Sure. Most of the local public parks have that open play kind of concept. The problem there is if you don't know what you're doing when you come up there, it'll be very evident. So people are intimidated by that process. If they haven't taken a course, if they haven't taken a lesson, if they don't know really what they want to do or how to do that, if they don't know how to keep score, where they're supposed to be on the court. There's some little things in pickleball that you need to know before I would go out and kind of subject yourself to that open play.
So you'd advise a lesson, and you do teach?
Of course. Yes, of course. We have beginner lessons every Tuesday and Thursday, and you can find those on our email at jackstoontown.com.
And you have a grand opening this weekend. I mean, you kind of have had a soft opening already.
Yeah, we've been open for about 5 weeks and had a soft opening, get our feet under us and see kind of get some of the wrinkles out. We're having a grand opening this Saturday, June 8th from 11 to 3. We're going to have some open play. We're going to have some chance for people to come out, get on a court, see what pickleball is all about, and see our facility. We're in downtown Jacksonville. We are a destination. We understand that it's not around the corner from anyone, that people have to drive a little ways to get there. We think we put together a good product that people will be willing to drive downtown and come to downtown and be a part of what we're doing.
So that's June 8th, 11 to 3?
Correct.
All right, at the corner of Talleyrand and Church.
Talleyrand Church.
Oh,
You
Richard
can't
Parks.
miss the building.
Yeah, you cannot miss it. Thanks so much for being here, Richard.
Yeah, of course.
All right, and that's our program. We encourage your feedback and suggestions. You can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight or hear our entire program archive on your favorite
Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or BaptistJax.com.
Will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter what happens, Senator?
No matter what happens? No, if it's an unfair election, I think it's going to be contested by either side.
Senator, no matter who wins.
I think you're asking the wrong person. The Democrats are the ones that have opposed every Republican victory since 2000.
Can a democracy function when an election is contested even before a single ballot has been cast? That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 here on WJCT News 89.9.